My name is Celia Avila de Santiago, and I'm the Senior Librarian here at the Junipero Serra Branch Library and co-chair of our system-wide LGBTQIA Services Committee.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Gina Diaz. I'm a messenger clerk in the Youth Services Department with the Los Angeles Public Library, and we're here to welcome you to today's LA Made with Hola Papi author J.P. Brammer.
Before we begin, we'd like to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities, our Library Foundation, and our behind-the-scenes staff for helping bring the LA Made programs to you virtually. LA Made focuses on the diverse landscape of Los Angeles, highlighting the immense artistic and performance talent that has developed in the course of the city's eclectic history. If you would like to see more of our amazing programs, please visit our online calendar at lapl.org/events, so here on the screen. And for our LA Made programs, visit lapl.org/LA Made. Our website also has blog posts and video links that highlight the library's diverse resources and upcoming programs.
We would also like to take this opportunity to recognize and acknowledge the first people of this land, honor their elders, past and present, as well as their descendants who are citizens of these nations. For more information on which territory you may reside on, check out native-land.ca. And now, on to today's program with J.P. Brammer. LGBTQ advice columnist John Paul Brammer writes a wise and charming memoir-in-essays chronicling his journey from a queer mixed-race kid in America's heartland to becoming the Chicano Carrie Bradshaw of his generation. Join us for this virtual-only program as he attempts to answer some of life's most challenging questions, including, how do I let go of the past? How do I become the person I want to be? Is there such a thing as being too gay?
And just as a reminder, participants viewing the program will have an opportunity to win a free copy of JP's book, Hola Papi. To enter for your chance to win, just email ecdept@lapl.org. So it's down in the comments and also on the screen. And now let's welcome to our LA Made stage, J.P. Brammer. Hey!
Hello!
Hello.
Hi, JP. We're so excited to have you here. Both Gina and I are huge fans, so we're totally fangirling right now.
Yes.
So to kick off the show, we wanted to have you read a little bit from the book.
Yes, I have my brand new paperback here. I actually just received a box of like 20 of them that I have no idea what to do with. So I'm glad that we're in the process of giving some of those away. The chapter I'm going to be reading from is the chapter where I was working in a tortilla factory. And the way the book is set up, if you're here and you haven't read the book, then congratulations. I don't know why you're here, but I'm glad that you are. Each chapter is structured like an advice column letter. So this letter writer's name is Panicked Hispanic. And so if you hear me say panicked, I'm referring to a person. Where do I start? Oh. Weeks went by, smelling of old salsa and queso, as school continued to pick up. I had become the president of, 4 different clubs, mostly because I had been the only one to raise my hand. I was the Spanish club president, the president of the National Honor Society, and the editor-in-chief of the yearbook, and yet I hardly did anything, because our school was mostly interested in not getting shut down by the government and avoiding hallway stabbings. I started bringing books and homework to the restaurant, and Javier would ask to take a look at them. "You should quit," he told me once, leafing through my math book. "You suck at this job." But before I would inevitably quit, I had my final Spanish exam. It took the form of a disgruntled customer whom Rodrigo and Javier giddily pushed me into dealing with. The customer was a short, slim woman in a halter top who wore her sunglasses indoors and had long acrylic nails. She marched her plastic tray up to the register and slammed it down. "No English, her," Rodrigo said, grinning ear to ear. "Go ahead." "Fine," I sighed. I walked up to the counter, ready to face the final boss battle of my video game. The woman looked at me, and although I couldn't see her eyes, I could tell she was ready to behead me. "Hola," I said to her. "Que es tu problema?" I wasn't exactly sure what she said back, but it sounded like she was methodically cursing out my ancestors one by one, plucking them individually from the branches of my family tree, generation by generation, before arriving at me. I did manage to pick up, however, that she'd wanted chicken tacos instead of beef. "Lo siento," I said again and again in my dumb gringo accent. "Voy a make tacos nuevos." I heard Rodrigo and Javier busting a gut in the kitchen. Un minuto, por favor. I went back to the kitchen, punched Javier and Rodrigo, which only made them laugh harder, and made the chicken tacos. The woman, meanwhile, was still talking without me there, fighting the very memory of me. I sheepishly returned with her food. I meant to tell her they were on the house, that they were free. What I actually said, according to Javier's subsequent translation, was freedom tacos. Here, I'd said, freedom tacos. The woman, perhaps so thrown off by this that she perceived it as a power move, accepted the new tacos and went back to her table. Rodrigo and Javier practically jumped on me, applauding me and laughing so hard I thought they might fall over. For a moment, I stopped taking myself so seriously. I had utterly failed. I was having a great time.
That was great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
I loved all the stories of you working in that tortilla factory, by the way, and like how your journey of learning Spanish with everybody. It was so beautiful. I totally ugly cried at some of the moments. So thank you for being with us today. Just as a reminder for everyone watching, if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the chat box and then we'll ask JP, we'll work them in. So JP, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into writing and what your process is like and how you worked to find your particular writing style?
Yeah, I think that I'm just very lucky that writing was around for me to be a perfect fit for, because it's just sort of where all my inclinations were. It's what I was naturally good at. I remember the first time I really thought about being a writer. I was in Cash Middle School, which has a pretty harrowing chapter in the book as well. And my first sixth grade English teacher, her name was Miss Bauman, and she was very, very old school. She was like 50s poodle skirt kind of woman with like really huge hair and like ascot around her neck. And we used to do this thing in her class where she would give us a vocabulary word, and our job was to make the shortest but most impressive sentence we could with that word. So the goal was twofold. It couldn't just be a short sentence. It also had to be interesting, or it had to be funny, or it had to be beautiful in some way. And this was like an unofficial competition. Like, she didn't name first place, second place, or anything, but everyone wanted the best sentence. And I started just like destroying people at it, and that was a lot of fun for me. And it got to the point where some of my classmates were like ganging up on me, where they would just like pool their brains and just be like, okay, let's like make our own sentence and we can beat them this time. Which of course, as like a kid whose only thing was like, oh, I hope I'm smart because nothing else is going for me, that was like great. It really made me feel, it was the one time of my day in middle school where I felt like I was capable, I could do something. So I just really stuck to it, and I thought, okay, cool, there's a whole profession that involves this very thing. And then that sort of continued into high school, where not only was my mom my English teacher in high school, which is, I could have written a whole chapter about that, but I didn't, thank God. But it was a unique experience. The high school I went to was rough. We didn't have enough desks for people. We didn't have enough books for people. There was a lot of violence, but we had a weirdly robust English department. And this one guy, whose name, we called him Doc because he had a PhD. He would always pick like 2 or 3 people every year that he had new students to enter into essay contests and stuff. And so that was how I won my first trip. Like, I got to take me and my dad to DC because I won first place in this national essay contest. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I have got to stick with this writing thing. And everything else from that point has just been, I can't tell if it's forced symmetry or if it just is symmetry, where it's just like, it's what I do. It's the muscle I use every single day. It has taken over my life to such an extent that I can't separate it from myself anymore. And it's honestly felt like that since I was a kid. So all that is to say, I don't think I had a choice. Now here I am.
Do you remember any of those sentences that you put forth to, like, totally smash your classmates?
Oh my gosh, you know what? I'm sure that if I did, they wouldn't be as nearly as impressive these days, because I was like in the 6th grade. Yeah, it was the 6th grade. So I thought I was great. I'm trying to remember what one of the, I mean, they were all words that actually weren't that complicated. I think one was like metamorphosis, which, one of those words that feels fancy when you're in the 6th grade. You're just like, whoa, how can I use this? And I remember that one just because I was like, I'm not going to do the butterfly. That's what everyone else would do. I'm going to do something different. Because everyone else is like, the caterpillar underwent a metamorphosis into a butterfly, and that's what made them lose. They should have been better.
Totally, I agree. Try harder.
Sounds very cutthroat.
I feel no sympathy for them.
Me either. Did anybody ever beat you?
Because there were no official judges, there was like a kangaroo court of like who had the best one, and so you could kind of gauge by Miss Bauman's reaction to the whole thing. Like I always knew I won based on how she reacted, but everyone else, of course, they were like, "Oh my gosh, we beat him today," and it's like you would say that there's like 6 of you together, and you wish. Yeah, I wonder what those people are up to nowadays.
Since your mom was your English teacher, has she been like the first person that reads your work, or what's that been like?
Definitely not the first person, because I would have to change everything if she was the first person to read it. What's funny is that like in writing about my family so often, my fear was never that my mom wouldn't want me to write about those things or wouldn't accept that that's what I was doing. I was more afraid that the writing itself wouldn't meet her standards, because her whole thing was like comparative lit when she was in college, and she was just very keen on like proper grammar, sentences that do what they're supposed to on the page, good writing. She has really good taste in everything, and so I was always worried that my book just wouldn't be good, and that was the big problem for me, because when I talk about such personal stuff in my book, my mom is just like, yeah, of course, that's what you do. You're a writer. Like, it's what you're supposed to do. She's sort of intentionally raised a gay artistic son, so it's her fault anyway. Even if there was something in it that she didn't like, it's like, well, lady, you should have thought of that before you lent me a copy of Factory Girl when I was in elementary school.
I was just gonna ask, what is a typical writing day like for you? Are you someone that has to like have something like that that has to be on your desk, or something that you have to like be snacking on, or else it just doesn't happen, or anything like that?
Yeah, because I'm so ritualistic with my writing, the pandemic was really hard for me. I know that's such a unique thing to hear. I am the only victim that I'm aware of in this whole process. Yeah, it was just like when all the coffee shops closed, I was screwed, because I cannot, or at least could not back then for the life of me, write in my actual house. My house is just full of too many familiar ghosts, and they all just want to like chit chat all the time, and I get crowded. What I need to do usually with my day, I get up pretty early. I just hop myself up on a cold brew, and then I go. And I don't even know necessarily what I'm working on that day, what the assignment's going to be, what I need to work on. I just know that I need to do something. So then like for the next few hours, probably until I would say like 8:30 a.m. to noon, I'm just like writing, drawing, making something happen while I'm writing this like temporary energy high of the caffeine or whatever. And I've done that most of my life at this point. It's such a tradition and such a daily thing for me now that the idea of going without it is horrifying. Even when I was like in quarantine, I kind of just had to fake it. Like I looked for YouTube channels that could give me the gentle din of a coffee shop in the background, just people like going about and having little talks, and the espresso machine making its steam noises and stuff. Like I just need all that. I don't know why. I never quite fooled myself. That stuff doesn't work on me. Like that whole like putting on the sound of rain on your YouTube or whatever, like that just, I'm just like, no, that's not how any of this works. So I had to rewire my brain a bit. But yeah, and if I'm very serious, if I need to do something very well, I will incorporate a lot of reading into it. I'm one of those people who I can't say I enjoy reading while I'm halfway through a book. Everything before that is pain. Everything before that is torture. It's like working out for me. Like if I'm picking up a book and I'm reading, it's because I have something I need to write, or I need to like feed my brain to get all the juices going so that I can perform at my top level. It's really difficult actually, but yeah, right now I'm reading a lot, unfortunately.
Is there a particular genre that you tune into when you're trying to get that done?
No genre at all. I will read anything and everything as long as I think the energy vaguely matches what I'm trying to do. So right now, this is really depressing me. I am reading this Hulken thing, Anna Karenina, and
Mm.
she's in for a bad time. I can already tell. I'm like a quarter of the way through, and I'm just like, I know what's going to happen here. You people need the revolution to come and wash all this away because you're just cruising for a boozing. So I'm reading that. I'm reading a book about eels. I think it's called The Book of Eels. It's very good. And I'm reading T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland at the moment because I'm finally into poetry because I stopped trying to make it make sense, which I find is the key.
Absolutely. That's so interesting. Why eels? Sorry.
Yeah. With that book, not only was it in like the New York Times list of 100 most influential books of the year, I think last year, but what I like about that book is that the author embedded a lot about his relationship with his dad into a book that's just about the scientific anomalies of eels. Like, we don't really know where they come from. We don't know where they breed. We don't know how they work. Their bodies are sort of mysterious to us. And his dad was also an eel fisher. So it like really blends a lot of the science of eels, but also the spirituality of not knowing where they come from and other people's guesses about how eels work with growing up with his dad and being an eel fisher. And I like those things that like the meaning is embedded in some other thing. Like, it's not truly about eels, it's about his relationship with his dad, but you need the eels for the whole thing to work. I like stuff like that. I like format. I like playing with genre and kind of putting things into uncanny structures. Like my book, like the advice column, it's not really actual advice letters that I'm answering in each chapter. It's just structured that way. I like books that play around like that. Anna Karenina doesn't do that.
No, it does not. So when you're writing and sharing your own personal experiences, it's one of the things that makes the letter so moving, right? So I know Gina and I talked a lot about like, this is so emotional, I'm gonna cry. But so we're curious to see how it is that you pull in those memories and what your process is like when you're sitting down to write a letter. And do you journal to kind of keep things flowing, or how is it that you apply your own personal experiences to provide this meaningful advice to?
Yeah. A lot of it is just on instinct for me. I think that my taste for things helps me out a lot because I don't necessarily always like the obvious things. So I think that besides this book, one of the more successful things I've written was this 7 sentences I can't get out of my head, which is just like 7 random sentences throughout my life, like 1 sentence each, that someone has said to me at some point that is just stuck in my head like a lyric that won't leave me. And each sentence I picked wasn't like the most important thing anyone's ever said to me. It wasn't the first time I heard "I love you." It wasn't the first time someone called me a slur. It was just like one of them is "good enough for you," which is something that this guy in a gas station told my dad when he found out that he was sending us to Catholic school. Because he was mad that my dad was doing that because he thought that was bougie, and he thought like, oh, you're a farm boy and you think you're so much better now because you went to Cash Middle School, but now you're sending your kids to St. Mary's Catholic school. And so he was like, well, Cash was good enough for you. And I remember that all the time. And so I wanted to write about it. So I like stuff that is a little bit off kilter, that isn't the obvious thing. And so when I'm trolling the seabed of my memories for what I want to write about, I don't necessarily always want it to be the most intense thing that's ever happened to me. Sometimes it's just like this dynamic I had with this person took on really unique dimensions, or it is part of a broader conversation that I think would have resonance with someone else. Um, it's just like, and when I look at my more painful memories, I don't necessarily, when I'm writing, think of them that way. I think of them as like, this is a color I can use, if that makes any sense, where it's like, this is a really interesting um, moment that I can portray in a certain way to auspicious effect in a book. So those things still hurt me. They still suck. But when I'm writing them down, I don't see them that way. I see them as like, I have the power to arrange this thing. I have the power to make music out of this thing. I can guide someone's eyes from sentence to sentence through this experience. And that is actually altogether different thing than the experience itself or the memory itself. It is a facsimile of a real event. So I'm quite at peace, honestly, writing about most things. There's some things I'm a little too embarrassed about to write still, but In time, I'm sure it's all going on the page at some point.
That actually leads me to one of my questions that I was really just fascinated by how you write about being an author of your own story. And you do that in the beginning of your book, especially in How to Lose a Rabbit, and
Mhm,
towards the end of your book in How to Answer a Letter Part 2.
mhm.
And you talk about the importance of acknowledging that we're the authors, creators of our own lives. Is that something that you knew you were going to incorporate in your book, or did it just happen?
Yeah, and in fact, one thing that's changed about me at this point in my life, because Hola Papi, it came out a year ago, and the process of writing and publishing it took about 2 years, like maybe 1.5 years, I want to say. So I am a different person than the person who wrote this book.
Mhm.
And so one thing I almost wish I had done, or at least one thing that's changed about me, is kind of gone even farther with that idea, because the older I get, the more things I experience, the more I realize that humans are entirely reliant on fictions. We are entirely reliant on magic tricks, on illusions, because if we were just living with the pure cold hard fact of everything at all times, we would lose our minds. It's just not how we think of things. When we teach history in a classroom, we're teaching a story. We say, here's the good guy or here's the bad guy, or here's the thing that was overcome, here's the winner, here's the loser. We lose a lot of nuance that way, yes, but it also is in a weird way beautiful to me, because it means that I think that we are narrative based animals, and it's something that we need every single day. So I was saying in that book, like, oh, you can be your own author. And I would amend that now to be like, you are your own author. Like, it's sort of like by virtue of being a human, it is something you have to engage in. We're all just sort of like magicians in a weird way. And so when I was writing this book, one thing that made that tack very appealing to me was that the advice columnist is sort of a magician. It's this person who is like, I have the authority to tell you what to do and what not to do, or I know right from wrong, or I have the advice that's going to help you in some way. That's a pretty heavy claim for a person to make, and that authority is very fragile, and yet it has to work in some way, be it in a column or starting it on a outlet in the media. People have to buy into this idea that, like, yes, you have something important to say. I can trust you with this question. I can trust you with an answer. And that to me brings up all these really interesting emotions of like imposter syndrome, or what if you don't have that? What if you are truly delusional? You think like, actually, yes, I do have all the answers that you need. That is such an interesting narrative and such an interesting story to tell. And so Hola Papi, I think the book in collective is me wrestling with the narrative of authority, me trying to go through all these things that have happened to me in my life, and then asking myself at the end, do these all add up? Does this constellation add up to authority? Do I deserve to be here? Do I deserve to be answering these questions? And it actually ends in a question mark. It ends with me not answering a letter, which I think is something I'm happy that I ended it that way on, because, if there's another world where I did the whole like self-help thing where I'm just like, and then I confidently answered that person's letter, knowing that my past did give me the wisdom I needed to tell this person what to do. I didn't do that because I think it's complicated and I think it's interesting and nuanced and silly, and maybe I don't have any business giving anyone advice. That's the kind of stuff I like. I don't like saying, yes, here's why I'm a great advice columnist. Look at my life.
So we have a question from the audience that kind of ties in. So Perla Esquivel asks if the topics of letters from folks have shifted in the past few years, or if they generally revolve around some of the same themes.
Yeah, one of the hugest pivots I have had was syndicating my column into the cut, because previously it was such an LGBT focused advice column, and I'm going to continue to call it an LGBTQ advice column because I think that's where its roots are, and I want to respect that, and it wouldn't be where it is today without that community, without my community. But when I got it syndicated in the cut, I started getting a lot more letters from straight people, from people in relationships that aren't like, we wouldn't call them gay. And that's been interesting to me. And also, of course, the pandemic changed a lot of things. For a little bit, a lot of my letters were focused on people moving out of the big city or having moved back in with their parents who maybe didn't accept them. So there's been little like shifts here and there, but overall, I think that some of the themes I typically get are like loneliness is a big one. It's just like, why haven't I found a boyfriend or girlfriend or partner? Or what's wrong with me? Or how do I find a friends? How do I find a community? Questions that are actually very hard to answer at the end of the day. And then a lot of them deal with what I would call like interior identity. So, this idea that you are actually not sure how to identify, that you are actually not quite sure of your gender identity, your sexuality, your orientation, how you want to move through the world, how you want to present, how you want to get what's in here out there. And of course, that reflects the LGBT roots of the thing as well, where it's like these are questions that a lot of LGBTQ people deal with every single day. Other than that, my favorites, unfortunately, are still like the really weird one-offs. I would refer to those as like the more classical advice column questions that are just like, okay, you're crazy, you're weird. You know what I mean? Like, you are out of your mind. Like one of the ones that I really love was the guy whose boyfriend, he discovered him being a fake Colombian. I don't know if you read that one before, where he was like, my boyfriend lied to me and said he was Colombian. I go to his family for Thanksgiving and they're just not Colombian.
Oh, yeah.
I love stuff like that. Those are few and far between, I think. I deal more with like the spiritual, abstract, wavy stuff. But I like it when I can get a little bit more concrete and be like, girl, what's going on?
Well, and April Ramirez, who's watching, does ask if you have top 5 favorite questions.
Oh, do I? So this my favorite is kind of a cheat because it wasn't the question that was my favorite, but it led to my favorite column of all time, which is this guy asked me, like, I just saw my boss on Grinder. What do I do? And the answer is, of course, nothing. Mind your own business. And so I used the rest of my column to interview a bee scientist about if the bees are dying. And so it was just like Hola Papi talking to a bee scientist about like future of the bees thoughts. And it was just like this advice column question was just like floating on top of the whole thing. It was so silly. Love that one. Love the fake Colombian one. One that I think about all the time is one that started out like, I'm a hip, cool lesbian and everyone's in love with me and I live in a really cool city. It was something like that. And it was just like this woman like bragging on herself for like, I don't know, 20 words straight. And I was just like, yes, go off. Like, why not? Yes. Flex on me. I'm trying to think. There are just so many over time. One where this couple found out they were catfishing each other. That was fun. I feel like I've lived a long life.
Oh man, I gotta read that one.
Really tired.
So we mentioned earlier, off screen, we were talking about the audiobook. So I listened to part of it on the audiobook, and you actually are the reader on the audiobook. So, which is available on Libby from us if anybody out there is interested. Was that your choice to read for the audiobook? And by the way, it was beautiful. I loved it. I feel like hearing you in your own words read everything was even more special. So, emotional me, ugly crying again. But can tell us a little bit about the audiobook and like reading it and the process.
Well, I'm glad you think so because the experience for me was pretty miserable. And it was one that was completely driven by ego for me because I found out that most of the time, first-time authors kind of have to audition for themselves to be their own audiobook person. So I have friends, for example, who didn't record their own audiobook. Someone else got the job because you kind of have to try out. And I was like, I'm not letting someone beat me at being me. I'm going to like go in there and read really well, and they will have no choice but to pick me. And then once they actually did pick me, I was like, why did I do this? Because then I had to go into like a studio several times, get these really big headphones clamped over my Dumbo ears. And then, by the way, this was still like pandemic. So it was like me in a mask most of the time, and we had to sort of like maneuver around each other very carefully. It was like a video game where like I had to close the door behind me and they closed the door behind them, and there was a huge wall of glass between us. Then we could sort of unmask, and then we could sort of start going. And it's just you reading your own words very slowly and specifically over and over and over again, confronted with your own syntax, your own silly little words that you wrote down yourself. And unfortunately, the one that I had to record the most times was the porn chapter, the one where I was like recapping gay porn for a living. So it was just me rereading those nasty, filthy paragraphs to like this very dispassionate clinical woman, just being like, "Can we get that again?" It's like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, what can I say? It was bad. It was hard.
Oh, I was imagining like a more glamorous process.
I
But
was too. I was imagining like like in the recording studios when they show like musical artists that are in the booth or whatever, and they're just sort of going off and doing their thing. I thought that's what it would be like, and it's not like that.
good to know. Would you do it again if you were to write another book?
So the book I'm writing right now, my second book, I've already determined, no, I will not be reading it because the confidence that I have to embody just to write this one, if I'm even a little bit insecure or unsure about what I'm doing, it's going to fall apart. I do not have the confidence to read any of these words out loud. Like they are just like kind of out there. So I'm hoping we get a really good voice actor who can turn it all into something. I do know that it will not be me. Absolutely not.
Would you be sitting in the audition process, or like, do you think you'll be able to get any say in it?
One thing I've noticed in this horrible industry of ours is just that, like, if you're perceived as successful, they let you do a lot of stuff. So there is a world in which, yes, I'm able to do that, and I don't think it's the norm. The more they think that you are a success story, the more goodies you get, which is like pretty unfair to me. But the fact of the matter is just like, yeah, I think there's a world where if I write the second book that I'm writing, and I'm like, I'm looking for a very specific voice to do this, I could maybe like elbow my way into that process. It would never have happened for Hola Papi. Like that was just like, no, you sit over there, we'll take care of this. It was very like, there were a lot of parts of that process where I felt like a first time author for sure.
I also love the cover art of Hola Papi. And I wanted to ask, did you do the illustration or was that somebody else?
So I asked to do it, and I was correctly told, no, it's more like math than you think, because it's like with the lettering and the kerning and the way it has to fit on a like actual cover. It was a lot of like architecture, honestly, and I thought I would just be able to draw something, and they were like, "No, you wouldn't. It's not how it works." No, okay, cool. The woman who did do it, her name is Sonia Polido, and I have never met her, but I love her, and I imagine her life all the time because her bio says that she is living in a fishing village outside of Barcelona, and so I'm just imagining this like impossibly chic woman just like drawing in her spare time and making little gay boys book covers and catching fish perhaps early in the morning, and she has a boat, and yeah, it's a whole saga between me and Sonia, very one-sided. When she like gave me the options, I was just like, yeah, that's it. You did it. Like, I kind of wanted some things to not be right on the first try so that I could like express myself a little bit more and just be like, no, I want this or I want that. But so much of this book, the way it came together on the physical product side of things was just like a one and done where I'm like, yep, that's the cover. Looks great. Yep, that's the bio. Okay. Just like kept going like that. I felt like I didn't care enough, but it was just all really good, so I have no complaints.
Go Sonia.
Yeah, we love Sonia. And Sonia in this house.
Well, and we read that the book was optioned by Funny or Die. So can you tell us more about that? Will you be involved in the process? Do you have like a dream casting or?
Yeah, I am entering my LA Hollywood era at the moment, which is endlessly entertaining for me. It's a strange little world. You live in LA, you maybe are adjacent to some of this stuff, but I'm spending a lot more time there. I'm taking a lot of meetings about it, and I've met some really amazing people who've made a lot of things that I personally love happen. Like I've met some people who've written on shows that like formed my sense of humor, that formed the way I grew up, and I have to sit across from them and pretend like we're doing business together when I just want to be like, oh my God, you wrote that? That came out of you? Like I just want to like, ugh, I don't know. So it's been a lot of fun. Because it's in the option period, my expectations are not through the roof, where I'm trying to manage how I feel about the whole thing, because the fact that it's been optioned is great. I do think, fingers crossed, we might know next week if the person I want to co-create with is going to accept my marriage proposal, and signs are looking good, but I don't want to jinx anything. I'm a very, very superstitious Mexican man. So I'm waiting to see if that turns out well. However, everyone's been so nice. Everyone's been so willing to collaborate. Everyone has just been nothing short of lovely, and the people at Funny or Die, especially, like, they're just nerds who love art and who love all the movies that I love and all the shows that I love. And I have found it very easy to collaborate with them. And at the moment, yes, I would be executive producing on it, and I would be heavily involved in the writing of it, the putting it together. We don't know which streaming service it would be up on. And the only thing I know about casting at the moment is that my mom bothers me once a week about being portrayed by Salma Hayek. That's all I know. That's all I've got.
If you could have like any actor portray you, who would it be?
So one great thing about this show is that I'm fictionalizing quite a bit of it, and I want to turn Hola Papi into a twink, because I think that would just be funny and interesting. And so it's going to be a very different person for me. Not that I'm not a twink, why can't I be? If that's what I say I am, then why not? But yeah, so I've been on this journey now of looking for spindly Chicano actors that could maybe portray the character, and I've not been doing a great job of it. I'm pretty bad at celebrities and keeping up with them anyway. So, one of the up and coming Gen Zers, I'm sure, will do it and knock it out of the park. And I wish him all the best. That's what I think will happen anyway.
So we have a question from one of the watchers about the cover. So let's go back to that real quick. Patricia Valdivinos wants to know if there are any hidden gems within the cover art that we might not see. So any special things.
Yeah. So I am an artist myself. I draw, I paint, and so images are very important to me. So as much as the writing matters to me, the cover was also a place where I was like, I want to express myself here. I want to do something interesting. Not because I think you should judge a book by its cover, but I'm a visual creature, and so one thing I wanted to do is put a lot of the symbols from the different chapters in the book. And so, first of all the papel pecados, they have different things inside of them, but it's these things like the comet, kind of referencing the Great Comet chapter at the end, the oak leaf, which references the oak leaf door knocker from the chapter of Falling in Love, the rabbit, of course, up here. To me, though, the rabbit will now and forever be. Oh no, is he not in the paperback? I guess he's not. But yeah, here he is, Baba the rabbit, a celebrity, really. And then I think the drink is the only one that doesn't really. It's just there to be sassy, Before that, Sonia had an eggplant there, I think, for the porn chapter, and I was like, Sonia, you're naughty. We can't do that. So there is a version of Hola Papi out there with an eggplant on it instead of a drink, and who knows? Maybe one day that'll be worth something.
Is that your rabbit, or is that someone else?
No, so in my head it made perfect sense where I was like, okay, my big chapter is how to lose a rabbit. I should hold a rabbit in my picture. So I sent out a call on Twitter being like, does anyone have like a really big rabbit? And so I got some responses from people in Brooklyn, and one of them is the owner of Baba the rabbit. And I went and I held Baba, and I thought I was going to cry because Baba is so sweet, so fluffy, looks like a Muppet, but is alive somehow. And I was just so overwhelmed by the perfection of this creature, this like really docile, sweet, adorable animal. I don't know. I was very emotional. That's what I remember about that day. I was like, oh my gosh. No, and I don't think that messaging translated super legibly. I think people love the rabbit, and then they're like, why is it a rabbit? And I'm like, oh, I thought it was so obvious at the time, but now I see that no, it just looks like I'm having a fun time like holding a rabbit. Which is fine. That's also great. Like, why not?
Yeah, why not? It looks great. It came out wonderful. So
I sent a picture of Shakira holding that baby from the Oral Fixation album, and I sent it to my editor, and I was like, I want this, but me and a rabbit. And he was like, okay, you got it, whatever you want.
I love that was the inspiration, and so forever I will think about that. Yeah. We have another audience question from Elizabeth Steen. So she loved your audio version of Authentically Mexican, A Family History in 6 Dishes. Your relationship with your grandmother really resonated with her, and what motivated you to write it?
Yeah, that one was such an interesting project for me to take on. It was confusing to me in many ways because I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but you get an assignment and you're not quite sure what the brief is, but you sure are doing something. And that for me was like that project because I hadn't done an audiobook before. It wasn't a podcast, it wasn't a book, it was something that existed in this other little realm. And to be honest, a lot of the criteria for the Audible project, I'm a big fan of using Audible, but when it comes to making something for Audible, my agent was sort of level with me like, hey, listen, they're going to own whatever it is you write for them for the rest of your life. So whatever you give them, make sure it's not something that you want to turn into something else. And so one of my past lives was as a food writer, and I've sort of retired from food writing. So I was like, this would be a nice opportunity for me to return to that and sort of like write about food, which is something that I love to do, and not have to worry about it coming back to bite me later. Because what if I did want to incorporate one of those into an essay collection, or what if I wanted to incorporate some of that material into the show, for example? I wouldn't be able to do that. So I knew that I wanted to do something pretty niche, and using food as the framing device was sort of like Hola Papi, the book, has the advice column format, and Authentically Mexican has the recipe format. And so it's like yet again another way for me to just sort of play around with the way things are normally done. And I always appreciate when people say they like that project, because it was one of those, it was made in a very stressful time in my life where I didn't have everything together. The pandemic was sort of like really raging. It was pre-vaccine. I really didn't know top from bottom at that time. And it was like me trying to get back into writing after having my routine so severely disrupted, and just trying to make it all happen for me and regain the magic of writing that I felt I had lost. And so it'll always hold a very specific place in my life for me. And whenever someone says they like it, I'm just like, it feels like they've met an obscure friend of ours. Like we have a mutual friend that, no way, how do you know my Audible project? Yeah, it's a good feeling. My abuela does feature pretty heavily in that one. And I would say this next book, even though it's fictional-ish, it's almost entirely about my abuela. So there'll be more of her.
Good. So was there ever another, this is also an audience question from John Ryan. Was there ever another career path that you considered? So if you weren't a writer, what do you think you'd be doing?
Yeah, visual art for sure. And now I kind of do that anyway. So it's a wash, I guess. But I knew from a very early age, and I don't know how to say this without negative judgment on myself, but I'm a pretty impractical creature where I think the things that I'm good at are like writing my feelings, making art, things that are sort of, for lack of a better term, very like, which one's the brain? Is it left brain or right brain? I don't know. I can't do math is the long and short of it. I struggle to do kind of normal stuff and daily tasks and figuring myself out in terms of like bureaucracy and systems, and I don't function very well. So I knew to put all the eggs in the creative basket. And so for me, the only life I could be living is the one I'm living now, where I have a lot of control over my creative pursuits and I'm getting paid for them, because I am a horrible employee. Even when that thing is writing, I've never kept a job for longer than like a year because I get bored or I lose passion. It was very hard for me to take assignments from an editor for over a year and then fulfill those assignments for them. I start to think like, why am I doing this for you? Like, I want to do my own thing. I want to have my own projects. So running a print shop, writing a book, doing my little one-off creative projects that I get paid whatever for. This is the only way that I can make it in this life. There is no plan B, because I'm bad at everything. Like I'm good at what I'm good at, I'm very good at what I'm good at, and I'm very bad at everything else. So it worked out in the end. But I remember in high school having that very frank conversation with myself where I was like, listen, kid, you gotta write, you gotta draw. That's it. Like, you have nothing else going for you. And I was right. So I'm not complaining. I'm very happy with what I do on a daily basis now. It just so happens to be the case that, like, if I had to take an office job, it would be for my survival, and I would leave it within like 10 months, like I've done several times. So
No, we're really happy that you are doing what you're doing. So
Yes.
like, please
Sure.
continue. We love it. Love your art.
Good,
Love your
good.
books.
It worked out for everyone. See, everyone's happy.
We're all super jazzed. Everybody in the
fine.
chat, I'm sure, can agree. So is your artistic process similar to your writing process, or do you have to have like different things or different locations that you work at?
Yeah, it is completely different. I can draw anywhere. I can draw at home. I can draw at night. And I think that's because I decided to reinvest myself in drawing during the pandemic, and it helped me go to sleep. So I would just like pop melatonin and just start drawing until I passed out. So it was very therapeutic for me up until it became a business, which is kind of how life goes for me. Writing was like that too. But with drawing, I don't know. It taps into a similar part of my brain, but I do notice that I kind of have to determine and decide what I'm going to be good at that day, because I can't do both. I can't be good at drawing and writing in one day. So I kind of have to be like, today's a drawing day or today's a writing day. Based on my habits, I have to write a little bit. I don't have to draw a little bit. I have to write every single day. I don't have to draw every single day. So usually it's a writing day, but I'm getting a lot more commissions with drawing lately, and it's very strange to me because drawing for me still, I see my writing as such a business person, and I see my drawing as this silly little side thing. And so when people take it seriously and I get an email being like, will you illustrate the cover of our magazine? I'm just like, why? That's really weird. I don't know. Like, I haven't quite wrap my brain around the idea that people would want my art and exchange money for it. It's very strange. It's very, I don't know, coconuts to me, because it's like I'm happy to be getting those commissions and it feels great. And I'm doing like tattoo commissions. I'm doing stuff for magazines. I did one for the Audubon Society that did really well. I did a scissor tail for them. And now they're putting it on like their merch and their website and their internal materials. And through it all, I'm just like, that's weird of you to do. Like, I never think this way about writing. Like writing, I'm just like, yeah, that's your business. Drawing for me still to this day is like more of a passion project. And so like with any passion project, when it starts yielding actual material benefits, it feels very, oh.
Can you tell us what was the last thing that you drew?
Yes, I'm drawing so much stuff right now. So right now what I'm working on is a cover for Oklahoma Today, and they gave me a choice. I could draw another scissor tail or a Deinonychus, which is like a velociraptor, or bison. And I think I'm drawing bison. And so it's a big problem for me because what I found now is that I'm used to drawing hair, I'm used to drawing people, I'm used to drawing birds. Fur is another matter entirely, and buffalo are very shaggy, and so I'm really struggling to bring this bison to life. It is very hard. I cannot give it the right hairdo, but now I'm very stubborn and I want to make it happen. So, yeah, that's what I'm working on now. I also recently drew this cowboy centaur that when I was in
I saw
Paris,
that.
I saw a lot of Art Nouveau, and I saw a lot of Art Nouveau in the service of advertising, which I thought was really cool. Like when you walk through Paris, you can see a lot of these old vintage advertisements. They're just the most beautiful things you've ever seen in the world, like custom lettering, beautiful, beautiful illustrations with a very unique take on perspectives and the way the body parts are sort of exaggerated. So I just wanted to do it. It was a little project for myself on the plane on the way back, where I was just like, make up a prompt for yourself, make an Art Nouveau ad about something. And it just happened to be a rodeo gay cowboy centaur thing.
That was on your Twitter, right?
It was, yeah. I want to put it on a shirt now because people liked it more than I thought they would. I was like, this is very specific, JP. I don't know. I really feel this one.
Well, and since you bring up your Paris trip, we have a question from Madeline Pena about something that you posted on Twitter. So, and Jean and I were also wondering about this. So are you still thinking about the finely carved mallard duck head umbrella? And will you ever go back for it?
When I tell you, I think about that damn umbrella all the time. Yes, sadly, yes. Like, I'm a person who I don't like a whole lot of things, but when I like something, it's hard for me to get it out of my head. And I don't know what my criteria is anymore, even. Like, it's just an object that calls to me. And that one was just like, had a spotlight on it. And it was something I had made a tweet before seeing that umbrella. where I was like, it's raining outside in New York. What a lovely time it would be to have a handsome mallard green umbrella with like a duck head handle or whatever. And then for it to exist in the way that it does, I'm just like, God. Yeah, they were closed. I'll come back. I think it had a sword in it, is the other crazy thing, because
That's what I
it
saw,
looks
the
like
speculations on Twitter where that is a sword.
there was a sword in it, I'm pretty sure. So I don't know how that didn't push me over the edge to getting it. Like, what am I saving my money for? I really don't know. Like, what have I got to do?
You need this umbrella,
I
Jen.
Yes.
should have got it. Yeah. I'm
You
so
need
sorry.
it. Please get it.
Well, I didn't think that it would haunt me the way it has haunted me, but there we are, you know?
Well, good. We're glad that you're going to go back to get it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I have to now. No choice. No choice.
How do you motivate yourself when you're at a block artistically?
Yeah, so one thing that I've discovered about artistic blocks is that there's quite a bit of, going back to a previous question, there's quite a bit of storytelling that goes into that. There's a narrative around it that says, like, it's gone, right? This idea that you had this talent, this ability, and it has decided to leave you. So we like personify it in a way, like it has fled from me. It's nowhere to be seen. I can't call upon it. For one reason or another, it has left me. Um, and I think that way of thinking isn't super conducive to overcoming it, because it mythologizes it in a way. It turns it into a matter of religion in a way where it's just like, sometimes you feel the power and the spirit of the Lord inside you, and sometimes you don't. And it's very, very appealing to make it seem like writing is like that. Because if you're a writer, you probably do hold some sort of sacred sentiment towards the process, where it's like, this is like prayer to me, or this is like a ritual to me, or this is something that is very spiritual to me. And so it takes on a heightened importance. And so when we want to write and we find that it's not happening, the crisis then too takes on a sort of sacred importance, where it's just like, this is a horrible dilemma I'm in. This is terrible. I can't write anymore. And this idea that you can't do it anymore kind of makes you anxious, and it feeds itself, where it's like, you're anxious that you're not able to write today. You're anxious, therefore, that it'll be the same thing tomorrow. Because you're anxious, you end up fulfilling the prophecy yourself, where the next day you're not able to write yet again. So this whole thing, the stuff that goes into the brain cauldron that makes a good writing day possible and a bad writing day possible. There's so much stuff going on there. Things that are going on emotionally in your life, what you ate that morning, how you slept last night. Like, there's just so many things involved in all that. And I think embracing that chaos actually is a really good way to break through those blocks, because for me, the only way to get through them is just by continuing to do. So I'm like, yes, I feel a block right now. Yes, there are like unique challenges, but what if my writing right now had a different flavor to it than the writing I would do if I wasn't feeling this? Or what if I lowered the stakes and said, write whatever you want, or just put something out there, turn it into an opportunity in some way, and just be like, yeah, okay, I'm in a completely different mindset than I was last week. That can actually be a little conducive to creativity, to doing something new and doing something interesting, because, it's really hard to get out of a mindset sometimes. Sometimes when I'm writing and I'm really in the zone, it becomes so precious to me to hold on to that exact point of view. And it's not always the case that you're able to do that. So you kind of have to bake the chaos into your process. And remember that writing is a craft. It's not necessarily like something that God sent you, or it's something that will be divinely stripped from you if you do something wrong, if you do a little sin. It is something that rewards the practice you put into it. So when in doubt, just practice some more. Even if the writing is bad, that's not the end of the world. Like, so what? People write bad stuff all the time. I write bad stuff all the time. It's part of the process. You can't get the good stuff without some bad stuff. So yeah, my whole thing is just like, I'm just going to keep writing. I'm just going to very stubbornly just sort of be like, I'm just going to see where this takes me, and maybe it will shake things up in a good way. Who knows?
So you've mentioned a little bit about what you're working on now. Is there anything else you can tell us about the project or the next book?
Yeah, going back to me being superstitious, I continue, after all that spiel I just said, I continue to be very mystical in my thinking, where I don't want to scare this next book away. And so I've kind of finally, after all this time of hoping that another idea would come to me, I'm working on it now. And I don't share too much about it, because I'm afraid that if I talk too much about it, it will run back into the woods because I scared it. But I do know that it's going to be illustrated. So I'm going to do my own drawings. I'm going to incorporate the drawings into the narrative. It is definitely more manic than Hola Papi. It is sort of going in a lot more different directions, and it's doing... I want to take a big swing with this one because I think Hola Papi opened so many doors for me, and this is my like straight A student, or my straight A son, who's like going to be the president and doing really good in school, and that's great. But I want to do something that is the kind of thing that I would dream of doing if I ever got my hands on success, like when I was in college, or when I was like had just graduated in college, didn't know what to do with my life. If I had all the abilities and opportunities that I have now back then, what would I have made? And so now I want to try that. I just want to do something really, really left field. And if it doesn't work, you can expect Hola Papi the sequel.
And I think we had, there was one audience question that we missed about how, from Matthew Dolan, how does anime influence your writing and your art?
This is someone who follows me on Twitter. I'm so certain of it. I watch a lot of anime, and this is a good tie-in to what I just said, because manga is something that I read a lot, and I like the idea of the way that like visuals and illustrations kind of play with each other. One thing I've always wanted to do is do like an Oklahoma anime kind of thing. So just like an illustrated, really like, it's about like a catfish mermaid, not my second book, but this other thing I'm doing. It's like kind of anime, kind of like Oklahoma, kind of Art Nouveau. I've always thought of anime as just like something I watch on the side, and I rarely incorporate it into whatever I'm doing in terms of my writing. But it is my dream to one day make some really funny, unique, interesting fusion between anime and the Wild West content of Oklahoma. I think that would just be so much fun.
Please do.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
So I think we've got you're getting a lot of love in the comments. April Ramirez says that she's the same way. She can't share good news while it's still in process, or ideas that she has. When you tied a question from a lesbian with answering about Evangelion, I knew I could trust you.
I know exactly what column you're talking about. Yes. We're here. We're here.
All right. So with that, we're going to go into our last section, is this or that. So we're going to ask you a series of like quick questions, and you can't think about it. You just have to like shoot and answer answer from your gut. Ready?
Yes.
All right. Gina, do you want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
Tacos or enchiladas?
Tacos.
Carrie Bradshaw or Miranda Hobbs?
Ooh, Miranda Hobbs.
Spicy or sweet?
Spicy.
Writing in a cafe or writing at home?
Writing in a cafe.
Ability to fly or time travel?
Fly.
Ocean or mountains?
Ocean.
Calling or texting?
Ooh, texting.
Planning or winging it?
Winging it.
Twitter or Instagram?
Instagram.
Ebook or book?
Book.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Hot chocolate or champurrado?
Champurrado.
Flan or creme brulee?
Ugh, flan.
Eclairs or mousse?
Ugh, eclairs.
Pear sorbet or vanilla ice cream?
Vanilla ice cream.
Tortillas de harina or tortillas de maíz?
Oh, political. Harina. I'm sorry, abuela. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, JP. We both love you so much. We can't wait for the next book and the manga Oklahoma book.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you. And
Thank
thank you all
you.
so much for watching
Thank you all for
today's
coming.
LMA program. Bye, JP.
Bye.
So thank you all so much for joining us for today's LMA program. And remember to check the library's online calendar at lapl.org/events. For more LGBTQIA library resources, please visit lapl.org/LGBTQIA. And also don't forget that you can get a copy of the book if you email ecdept@lapl.org. So make sure to get those emails in right now.
And don't forget to check out our next LA Made program on Wednesday, July 6th at 11 a.m., where we welcome the Los Angeles Dodgers landscaping team as they talk about how they transform the outside of the stadium into an accredited botanical garden.
So until next time, we truly appreciate all of your support. The success of LA Made and all of our library programs could not happen without viewers like you. So thank you all so much. Muchas gracias and happy Pride to everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.